when the yogis focus their mind on the arising object, the presently arising object within one's own mind, within one's own body, focusing on that object as it arises, due to steadfast mindfulness and the mind falling collectedly on the object, then with full energy of effort, concentration, and mindfulness, one comes to know clearly the difference between physical and mental, rupa and nama. And even when blinking one's eyes, when closing and open them, the physical and the mental, rupa and nama, are evident. And respectfully practicing yogis, those who work carefully, cherishing the practice, are able to know this. Those who use their time well can see like this. And those who practice lightly, noting lightly, their discernment of nama and rupa is not clear. And thus, when they report, they just say what they think is there, not what they've really seen. If this is the case, then it will be a personal loss for whoever is in that situation. This is a situation where one needs to use the time we have for our own benefit. And when the practice is being done lightly, not only is it a loss for oneself, but also when others see this happening, it's not good to see. So to use, Sayadaw urges all the yogis to use the time that you have here well, to make it worthwhile having come here. And doing this, one will have the energy to control one's own mind and thus won't harm others. To be a true human being is very good work in this world. Getting the better of others, especially through unjust means, is disgusting. What we aim for here is Dhamma Vijaya, that is Dhamma victory, the victory that we gain over ourselves. So Sayadaw urges all the yogis, cherish the Dhamma and make effort in the practice. Yogis who are practicing respectfully, in the beginning, they didn't know they didn't know the discernment, distinction between nama and rupa as they do now. Or they did not know the distinction between nama and rupa through the practice, in developing the practice. And until this knowledge is developed, there are two beliefs in atta, or self, that occur. And following these beliefs in self, there are many other types of wrong belief that one is prone to. In Pali, the word for self or soul is atta. In Hindi, it's atma. And in other religions, according to the vocabulary of that religion, for example, Christianity refers to a soul and also a creator. But so there's different vocabulary for this concept in various religions. There are two kinds of atta, or self, you might say. Jiva atta is the first, and the second is parama atta. This first jiva atta is always in one's being, and it exists throughout lifetimes. On the death of the body, it just moves to a new body. And due to the movement of this atta, all the movements that we make come about. And this atta varies in size depending on the size of the person or being. It can be very small if the being is small, or very large if the being is very large, like an elephant. And this is, each person has this atta. And the self, it's like a part of the creator atta. It's a separate part. And in each being there's this atta, this self that experiences whenever a sight is seen or heard, sound heard, whenever there's a smell, taste, touch, even thinking is all experienced by this atta. And whatever is known by this atta. So this jiva atta, there's a separate one in each being, and it's also said that this is permanent, nechocha. So this is permanent. And if one doesn't see the mental and physical phenomena that really exist in our being, if one doesn't see them as they are, then this belief enters our mind. And from a very young age, we develop this belief, and it's hard to eliminate. At the time of the Buddha, there were many other religions, and these mostly proclaimed a view of self, this attavadi. They declared that there is a self. The Buddha declared that there is not a self, anatta. If we can follow the path of the Buddha according to the instructions, one will become completely clear. One will become free of the view of both of these types of atta. And this is not just by reading about it or thinking about it. This view cannot be eliminated or uprooted by any scientific method. It can only be uprooted by observation done through the practice of satipatthana. When we develop the knowledge of the discernment of nama and rupa, the belief in this individual self, jiva atta, is dispelled, and the light of the sasana starts to be bright. So when we are able to discern the distinction between nama and rupa, then we gain the light of Dhamma Vipassana jnana, the knowledge that discerns the Dhamma clearly. And at this point, the darkness of confusion about the Dhamma is dispelled. So Sayadaw started to talk about this yesterday. This knowledge of the discernment of nama and rupa is extremely valuable. In developing this extremely valuable knowledge, in doing the work that leads to this understanding, it's not suitable to work lightly, superficially, or carelessly. One needs to work respectfully and cherishing the work that we're doing. In one's being, these two, nama and rupa, occur in a pair. They're occurring in pairs all the time. Not just nama, not just mentality, and not just rupa or physicality. They combine, and thus the work gets done. When they combine, there is seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, lifting, moving, placing, bending and stretching, opening and closing the eyes, blinking the eyes. Because of the combination of nama and rupa together, all these things can happen. In all the things that we do, nama and rupa are occurring in a pair. The mind and the body, nama and rupa, depend on each other. Nama depends on the mind, depends on the body, and the body depends on the mind. And what it's like is described in the text. For example, say there's a lame person. They can't walk because their legs are no good. And there's a blind person. The blind person is healthy but can't see. So if the lame person needs to go somewhere, he can't. He or she can't go because their legs don't work. And if the blind person needs to go somewhere, also there's a problem because the blind person can't see where they're going. But when the two of them pair up, then they can go. And how it happens is that the lame person gets on top of the blind person's shoulders and points out the way. So this, because the lame person can see, they can point out the way. And this is like nama mentality. And the blind person just follows, he has to just follow the orders of the person who can see. And this is like rupa, physicality. The nama and rupa in our body are just like this. The rupa is, the physicality is like a blind person who can't walk on its own. And the nama is like a lame person who also can't walk on its own. So all beings, all of us are like this. Then with the mentality is like eyes are like eyes, and the physicality is like the physical ability to go somewhere. So yogis who focus carefully, if you can understand this example and then with that in mind, focus carefully on what happens, what arises in your mind and body, according to the instructions. In just a few days, one can come to this understanding. And if not, then one doesn't gain this knowledge without working according to the instructions. This knowledge can't be gained by thinking. It can only be gained by careful application of the practice. If we could gain this knowledge by thinking or by any reading or scientific method, there would be no need to come here. You could just meditate at your own home. So, if one has a real desire to learn, to know about the phenomena in us, to know how there is nama and how there is rupa occurring together in our body, and if one follows the instruction, as the teacher points out, then one has the quality of being easy to teach. Sowa sachata. Sowa chasata is what it's called. One is easy to teach if one follows what the teacher says, putting it into practice. If this quality of listening to the teacher's instructions and trying one's best to follow it is not present, what happens is what the teacher instructs is one thing, and what the yogi does is another. They're at odds. And in that case, the teacher can see that the yogi is not applying the practice, the knowledge isn't being developed. They've tried their best to instruct. So the teacher must make the wish then that the yogi, may they be able to find the path. They establish an attitude of metta and they try to do what they can. But this is all they can do because it's necessary for the yogi to follow the instruction for the teaching to be effective. So yogis should understand this good intention of the teachers and do your best to follow the instructions. If you do so, it does not take very long. You don't need to practice all that long. If one is of a good age and good health, in 3 weeks you can gain the goal of this practice. So, Sayadaw said the difficulty is that although the teachers point out, the yogis often do not follow the instructions and he doesn't know what to do about this. Understanding the method of this experiential practice and having a strong desire to gain the benefits. We understand then the path of a true human being. Having human knowledge, basic human intelligence, we want to be better. We want to be a high-level human being. And understanding the practice, having faith in the results and in the practice, and having a real desire to become a high-level human being. To the extent one applies the practice, one will achieve this. In observing sila, morality, we're instructed to avoid killing, stealing, adultery, other misdeeds. And if one does this, if one refrains from these misdeeds as instructed, then one is truly human in one's morality. And no matter what age one may be, if one keeps the training of sila, then one is human, truly human. And then we try to observe the arising object, every arising object, with steadfast mindfulness. When we do this, no desire comes up to harm another person or to steal. One has human mentality at that time. One has human understanding. And if one continues the practice stage by stage, then one's mind will become mature. A mind that is mature is able to endure, whether it's suffering or happiness. One is able to endure these conditions. One can stand the suffering or happiness that may come one's way. So in the practice, one is practicing being a human being, one is practicing to become even better. And our sila is fulfilled because of having the intention not to overcome anything, not to transgress in any way. So we have the three factors of sila. And we make the effort to note the arising object. And then sati arises, becomes steadfast. The mind falls collectively on the object. The mind doesn't go anywhere at all. So the mind is collected on the object. And with accurate aim, when the accurate aim occurs enough times, then knowledge starts to develop, starting with the discernment of nama and rupa. And thus the Eightfold Path is in place, as Sayadaw mentioned before. This is the three elements of this path of sila, the three elements of the samadhi group, and the two elements of the wisdom group. Effort, sati, and samadhi, making up the samadhi group, and accurate aim and knowledge, right view, making up the wisdom group. So this is the straight path to peace. And every second that these factors are present, this path to peace is occurring. Even before knowledge arises, with effort, sati, and samadhi, the obsessive kilesas are being dispelled, the pariyotana kilesas. So we have this benefit. If one can't focus on the object, then one loses the samadhi group. One does not have the samadhi group of the path. And if one, instead of doing this practice, one does something else, then it's a loss. It's a loss for oneself. So Sayadaw says that if you are here, if you've already come here, then don't settle for a loss. Practice according to the instructions, cherishing the practice. Yogis who do this are lovable. When others see a yogi that is practicing according to the instructions and cherishing the practice, it's evident, and those around you will love you. On the other hand, if one is just pretending, that is, going through the motions without actually applying the mind to the body and mind, then Sayadaw doesn't like this at all. And he also does not like it if people come here where we teach this method and then do other methods, or they do their own method. If people are going to practice other methods, there is no need to come here. And this is Sayadaw's first warning in this regard. Today he was observing the male yogis, and he saw some things that were not very good to see. And so he says that the teachers and he, including him, are trying as much as they can to help the yogis. In turn, it's very important for the yogis to follow the instructions of the teachers. All that they ask is that you try with respect and cherishing the practice. If one undertakes the practice lightly, then it's, I can't read what I wrote. It's very disastrous if one just practices lightly. So please be careful about this. In everything that the Buddha taught, there is nothing that the Buddha taught that can make a being low, that can cause us to become degraded. The Buddha taught in order to make our lives better, so that one could become a high-level being. The teachings of the Buddha are called the Dhamma and Vinaya, Dhamma Vinaya. And Dhamma, the word Dhamma means, it said the Dhamma lifts, the Dhamma bearer. The word Dhamma means that it's something that lifts up, elevates, pulls up. the person who practices according to the instructions of the Dhamma. The word has this meaning. So there are beings, there are people who are human, but they don't have any morality. They don't keep sila. And they don't have human mentality. They don't have human feelings. The Buddha doesn't want these beings to go down. He doesn't want these people to be low level. Thus, he taught a method for beings to raise up their lives. The Dhamma has this meaning that when one knows the correct method and practices according to the Dhamma, that Dhamma will pull one up, lift one up, elevate one so that one doesn't fall down. Those who understand this meaning, understand that this is what the Dhamma is about, undertake this practice in order to raise up their lives. If there are no guidelines, if there's no boundaries, there's no rules, the practice won't be effective. And this is the meaning of the word vinaya. The vinaya refers to guidelines and discipline. For example, lay people need to keep 5 precepts for practice. Lay people should keep a minimum of 5 precepts. Monks need to keep the sila of monks. Our morality must be kept. And, of course, also, there are rules at the center too that are established according to what seems appropriate at the time. And Sayadaw discussed pamada, negligence, and apamada, diligence. So if one does not avoid doing misdeeds, but instead indulges in them, letting one's mind go, then that's an insult to the center. And if people just let their minds go with Sayadaw did not say specifically in misdeeds, then one's life is just spent. One's time is caught up with one's entertaining or indulging one's mind in things outside of the practice, in what Sayadaw mentioned before. So one has to be, in terms of morality, one needs to be content with the partner which one has. One shouldn't go outside of one's relationship in order to satisfy one's sense desires. One should be satisfied with the things which one has. And if one practices to the extent that one practices, one's physical, verbal, and mental behavior will become clean, and one's mind will be kept away from sense desires. Vipassana knowledge is for quelling, quieting down the obsessive kilesas, and for uprooting the seeds of kilesas. So one who practices the method of satipatthana according to the instructions becomes truly human, is a real human being, is a human among humans. And Sayadaw said, rules are set for yogis, and they're the ones he's mentioned, that one needs to practice respectfully. One needs to aim to have continuity of noting. and one needs to practice without taking breaks. One needs to do the practice just as if one were taking a necessary medicine to overcome a disease. One needs to be developing the mind every second of the time. So if one is going to do a good job, if one is going to do something that is a good type of thing to do, then so much more that one needs to do it according to rules, according to guidelines. And doing things according to the rules is what is meant by Dhamma Vinaya. When one can practice according to the instructions and according to the guidelines and discipline, then the teaching of the Buddha, the Dhamma Vinaya, is alive. And when the Dhamma Vinaya is alive in one's being, then the Buddha is also alive. If one wants to meet the real living Buddha, then practice according to the instructions. Every second, try to use your time every second without wasting any moment. If you do so, you will definitely come to see the Buddha. That's all Sayadaw wants to say for today, and please consider this to be a special warning. Sadhu, 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 sadhu.